Hello everyone, this is Rok and today we're gonna have a look at space switching in Houdini. So, space switching is widely used in character animation because it allows controls and objects to be influenced by other controls and objects. So when a character grabs an object, it is much easier that either that object or the character's hand switches his transformation space to the other object. So then the animator only has to animate one control and the other will follow instead of controlling two controls separately. We're going to use constraints to set up a basic setup and then look at different scenarios that we might expect when setting up space switching. So here we have a typical setup where we have a character and three platforms. And we will want to set up so that this character switches from one platform to the other. So first let's see how everything is set up. Here we have a character and one master control that controls the whole character to move around. And I've done the same for each of these platforms. Each control has two nulls above it. One is simply for positioning in space and the other is used for constraints. And this constraint is gonna be the one that we're gonna use to switch between this character's world space and this green, yellow and red control space. So for each space we're gonna create another null. So I'm going to say character green space, and we're gonna set it so that the default position will be this control position. Just let it 0 and keep position parroting and so on. And then just duplicate this and say character red space and character yellow space. Now each of these, we can hide them, but each of these will be parented under each control. So yellow and yellow, and we're gonna use these three to create the constraint. So select the character constraints, parent blend simple, and keep position should be on. Now select the parent objects, which are green, red and yellow, accept selection. And now we have a basic constraint setup for us. Now if we go into character constraints and constraints, we see that this constraint system has been set up. So if we look at this blend parents node, this is what actually blends between these different spaces. So if we move the yellow, we see that it only partially affects our character. This is because at this point all spaces from green, red, yellow and world spaces are affecting our character position. And the blend 0 is basically the parent space of the current character control, and this is basically a world space in this case. So we're going to use this one as a world space, and if we say that only this system affects our character, then green and red object will have no influence on our character. Now if we want to go back to our world space, we only need to set blend 0 to 1. To make this easier for the animator, we're gonna add controls to this character control and it parameter interface, and we're gonna create a folder and parameters that will be much easier for animators to choose each space or when switching spaces. For the space, we're gonna use an ordered menu type of parameter. So label will be space, and I'm gonna set up some token, and we're gonna say 0 is our world or parent space in this case. And if we go and check the character constraints, which so green space will be 1, red 2, and yellow. So green, 2 is red, and 3 is yellow. Say apply, and now here we have a space switching menu. So we're going to copy this parameter and paste it into this blend parents node. So we're going to say paste relative reference and say if this space is 0, then the value should be 1, otherwise 0. And we're gonna copy this for the green, except that the value should be checked against this 1. And again for the red, which has the value of 2, and yellow the value of 3. So now if we say yellow, you see that it sticks to the yellow. If we set this control now to world, it's at its world position, and the yellow does not affect it anymore. And if we say to red, see that the red is affecting, and we set to do green, you see that the green one is affecting our character. So one thing you probably noticed is that our character is jumping when switching spaces. So if we go from green to yellow, you see that the character jumps, and if you go to red, it jumps up again. So this is because these spaces have moved from its default position. And this is very normal when animating, because the objects we're switching to are also animated. So now it's time to look at how to switch space and keep the position. The way we're going to keep the position when changing spaces is by storing this control world transformation, then make the switch into the new space, and then recall back the world transformation from the old space. To do that, we're going to add another parameter, and it's going to be a duplicate of this space parameter. We're going to call it space switch. Label it switch 2. It already has a menu from the copied parameter, and we're going to use an action button. This action button is when the animator will press this button, the switch is going to be made, and all this storing and setting new space and recalling back transformation will be done in this code. So So here we are just getting our current node, which is our control. We check the old space from which we are switching and the new space to which we will switch to. So here we first store the world transformation of our node, change the space, and in this new space set back the world transformation. And we can change the icon to something like this. Apply. First, let's see if we go from red to green or red to yellow, we see that it jumps. But let's try with this new switch to, and yellow, call it, and the new space is yellow, and the position stayed the same. So now we're in yellow, and if we use the new switch to, let's say to green, the yellow shouldn't affect anymore, but the green one should. So one thing to keep in mind is that this controls transform values change when using this switch to button and menu. This is because the control has changed space, but in this new space it went back to its old world position. Also the parameter that is to be animated and keyed is this one, space. There's no need to key or do anything with the switch to button because it basically is just an action button. So what does bidirectional space switching mean? It simply means that, for instance, at the beginning of the shot, our character is constrained to this yellow object, and later they switch constraints, meaning that this yellow object will be constrained to our character. As far as constraints go, this could create a problem simply because it creates a cycle, and that's why the constraint setup must be set up in a way that the objects are never constrained to each other at the same time. This is because we create a cycle, and a never-ending cycle, because this one is affecting this one and this one is affecting this one, and we just enter into an infinite loop. So this is a problem if we use in our constraint chop the blend parents node. This because it uses all the inputs. What we must do here is use another node that will always use just one of these inputs. So for that we're gonna use the switch node. So let's switch to switch and connect it to all these space objects. Say switch space. And let's copy this space parameter to our input base relative references. So as we see now, let's see, green is still affecting. If you change this to yellow, the yellow is working. Or let's use our switch. So change to red. So basically everything works by using the switch node instead of blend parent. So now for our yellow object that we want also to be constrained to character, we should also create this rig folder. And we're going to create an ordered menu. Space. Space. And menu create 0 is world parent and 1 is character. Accept. And now all we have to is create a constraint. So let's select our yellow constraints. First, make sure that we are not into yellow space. We are not in red for the character. And now we can, for our yellow constraints, let's just first move the control to 0. So you're in default position. And now create the constraint. Select the yellow constraints. Create a parent blend, simple, keep position, and select the character control. Click enter, and let's go into our constraint chop, and let's do the same by using the switch node. Delete these blend parents because we don't need it. Switch space. So let's just copy this parameter and paste relative reference. Since our character is not constrained to yellow object, let's constrain the yellow to our character and see what happens. So it's working and everything's moving together. If we change this space to world, our character and the yellow object are not affecting each other. But what if now we want our yellow object to affect our character? Let's just switch to yellow space. And now the yellow object is again affecting the character. At this point, we could also create the same as a character, this switch to parameter. And we could just copy this code that we'll use in this yellow control. So first, duplicate this space parameter and switch to as a space switch. The menu is already correct because we copied it, and just paste this code here. So say buttons and reload. For the icon, so right now we are in world space, and first let's make the character go into different space. And now if we use for the yellow object this switch to menu and move the character, we see that it keeps the position as well. So one thing to keep in mind is that the character and the yellow object, or the objects which are part of the bidirectional constraint, should never be constrained to each other at the same time, because then we will get unpredictable results. So if we switch the character right now that the object is constrained to character, and we switch this character also to this yellow object, to yellow, we'll see that we get unpredictable results. So this should be avoided. So to prevent having these two objects being in each other's space at the same time, we can create a parameter that will check if other object is in this space, and we'll write our action button in a way that it will not change the space. For instance, it will not change the character space to go into yellow space if yellow space is already in character space. So for that we can just create, let's create a toggle and say yellow in character space, parameter yellow in space, and copy this space parameter and say, so this is 0, this is value 1. So when the value of our space is 1 in the yellow control, we cannot switch from character into yellow space. So let's edit the expression. If so here we're just saying if the space, the yellow space is character, the value of this parameter will be 1, otherwise it will be 0. So if we change this to world space, this parameter will have a 0 value. So now when we go into our character menu and change the switch to, we can first check the yellow space, character space is no parameter, and we set yellow into space. And say if yellow in character space is 0, then we can make the switch. Otherwise, we'll just display the message. Message cannot switch to space. So let's see if this works. So the yellow is in character, and if you switch to yellow, you get the message cannot switch to yellow space. And if the yellow is in world space, we can make the switch. So now we can also do this for the yellow object. And do the same here, create a toggle, say is character in yellow space, toggle accept, and so if if character control space is 3, return value of 1, otherwise 0, except should also the name and the name parameter character in yellow space. And the same we can do with the switch to action button. We can do the same. Yellow space if character in yellow space is 0, we can make the switch. Otherwise, cannot switch space. It's okay. We can actually hide this parameter because it does need to be visible to the animator. So now, with character being in yellow space, the yellow space shouldn't allow to switch to character space, so cannot switch space. So first the character would have to go to some other space, and then the yellow can go to character space. Also now with bidirectional constraints, there's just one thing that must be done, and this is due to caching. When we're animating, Houdini caches data, and with bidirectional constraints, the caching of these null object constraints should be turned off. And this is done by going into the miscellaneous tab and disable this cache object transform for both objects. So the yellow constraints and the character constraints. Otherwise, the space switching of bidirectional constraints might not update properly. That's it for this video. Hope it was useful and hope to see you next time. Bye bye.